This is AP Environmental Science, Chapter 1. This is the last part in Chapter 1, and today we're going to be discussing science as a process. And it's very important that we understand how science works and how we begin to investigate and understand the natural world. And it's through this process or this methodology, the scientific method, that we come to know the natural universe and begin to discover things in the natural universe. And so it's a very important thing that in environmental science we understand the scientific method, how science works, because this is, in this course, what we use in order to come to understanding of the health of the planet. And so it's also important because in society oftentimes we misunderstand how science works, and so oftentimes people can have a wrong view of certain concepts or discoveries because they don't quite understand how the scientific process works. So we'll be discussing this, and we'll continue to discuss this. And this is what we use in the in environmental science. So the scientific method. Hopefully, you've been introduced to this before in other classes. So this is the basic process. First, you're going to make an observation of some sort. Using your senses, you're going to observe some physical, natural thing around you. And then you're going to ask a question. After you've asked that question or questions, you're going to develop a hypothesis. You're going to propose an explanation that is testable, a prediction of the outcome of an experiment. You're going to then collect data. Really, there's technically a step in between your design and experiment. After you design a controlled experiment, you would collect data. From that, you would then interpret your results, and then you would share your findings with other scientists, and then they would critique them and question them as well. And so figure 1.16 is a very important diagram, and this is the process, a good flow chart for you to look at. So observing and asking questions. This is the first process of this, or first step to the scientific process. Very important. Observant individual typically makes a good scientist. And then when you form a hypothesis, so again, a hypothesis, this is the definition, this first bullet point, testable conjecture about how something works. This can be proved or disproved through a controlled experiment. The big deal here with the hypothesis is that it's testable. You have to be able to test the hypothesis. Otherwise, it's worthless to science, and really it's meaningless. And you should also understand, we'll get more in depth with this term right here, a null hypothesis. And this is a statement that can be proved wrong. Oftentimes we'll make a null hypothesis, it's oftentimes the best way to develop or design an experiment to sort of push scientific findings forward. So when we collect data, there's some important terms that we talk about when collecting data. Replication is very important. So repeating the measurement the same way many different times, replication is very important. You don't want to halfway through your measurement scheme start measuring differently. If you do that, then your data is now skewed. Sample size, we'll talk more about the sample size, but this is the number of times the measurement is repeated. And you don't want too few samples, and you don't want too many samples. It becomes impractical and sometimes expensive. And so you have to find the appropriate sample size when you're conducting an experiment. Accuracy, you want to, these are just two terms you should memorize, accuracy and precision. These are in relationship or in relation with measurement, and so they're important that you know these definitions and understand them. There's a diagram that really help out with this. And then uncertainty, we have to be realistic when we do measurement and collecting data. There's always a degree of uncertainty and error, and so we need to be able to sort of assess the best we can how certain we are of certain findings, and what percent error is in those findings or in that measurement. Disseminating findings. So in science, after you've gone through that process, the last step is to share your findings with other scientists. And so once you've gone through experimentation and confirmed or reject your hypothesis, then you would share your findings with other scientists and publish your results of your investigation. And then this allows other scientists, this is a very important key to science, it allows other scientists to repeat the original experiment or challenge it with a slightly different experiment. And then they're either going to verify and confirm your results, or they're going to challenge and reject your results. This is a very important part of science, and literally thousands of scientists globally that don't even speak the same language oftentimes are doing this process of repeating and challenging your results. You go to a conference, oftentimes there's arguments and people are challenging and skeptical of your findings. I'm just going to point this figure out. Take a look at this figure 1.17 in your book. I feel this is a good diagram for you to take a look at. It's pretty self-explanatory. Two different definitions you need to memorize and understand. The word theory. So in everyday conversation, we may use the word theory in different ways that are not really how we use it in science. So you may say, well, my theory is X. And or you may say, that's just a theory. Well, in science, theory is regarded as one of the highest levels of understanding of a particular concept. And so to become a theory, a hypothesis has to be repeatedly tested and confirmed by multiple groups of researchers and widely accepted. And so not many things become theory. They start off as a hypothesis, and then as that process, the previous slide, this one up here, sharing findings and repeating those experiments, it's tested over and over again, and as it's confirmed or rejected by literally hundreds and maybe thousands of groups of researchers globally, then it may become a theory. So a theory is well tested. So germ theory, atomic theory, evolutionary theory, all of these theories are well tested and confirmed by researchers globally. When all theories start off as a hypothesis proposed by a group of, one scientist or more, and then through testing over and over again, it will develop into theory. Natural law is a little bit different because natural law, there are no known exceptions to that hypothesis, and so it becomes natural law. An example is law of gravity. There's no known exceptions, right? You're always gonna, if you trip, you're always gonna fall to the ground. You're not gonna fall up. We've never seen that or experienced that. The law of thermodynamics, which we'll get into in a later chapter. So natural law is a little bit different than a theory, but remember, a theory, when we describe something as theory, it is as close to fact as possible, although when we gather more information, that theory changes and such. So we'll talk more about that. Controlled experiments and natural experiments. A controlled experiment, you should know a little bit about this, but this is going to be conducted in with controlled conditions in a particular way, oftentimes in a laboratory. And you should take a look at this figure and read each step to this figure. I find it helpful. This is the process of science, and you should read through this. I think it's important to understand what the difference between, oops, I'm using yellow, so experimental group and controlled group is. Natural experiments, sometimes we have the opportunity to do an experiment in nature. So an example is a natural event occurs, such as a volcano, and this acts as the experimental treatment in the ecosystem, and you can gather data that way. So we've actually recently done this on an island in the Pacific. There was a volcano, and almost immediately scientists went to that island to basically measure and collect data on colonization of living things on that island, and then also just general ecological succession. So here's some pictures in your book that talk about this. You have a forest area, volcano occurs, or a fire, and then you start to have ecological succession. When a natural event happens like this, that's called a natural experiment, and can be useful. So experimental science presents, I'm sorry, I don't know why I wrote experimental, environmental science, excuse me. So this should be environmental science presents unique challenges. So in environmental science, there's no control for our planet to compare Earth with. So we do have some planets we can compare with, like Venus and Mars, when we talk about climate change and the composition of their atmosphere compared to ours, but it's really not the same. And so there's no control planet, and so it's difficult in terms of a global experiment to really define data and findings. It's difficult to decide what is better or worse for the environment than someone or something else. And so, we sort of talked about this. What is better, solar panels or wind power? They both have pros and they both have cons. So which one is better for the environment? This is complex and difficult to measure. And so environmental science has challenges with that. Environmental science, as we said the first day, has so many interacting parts. It's incredibly complex. It involves many scientific disciplines, and so it is quite complex, and it's not easy to apply one system to another. And so environmental science is potentially one of the most complex scientific disciplines that there is. Human well-being is a concern because people that are unable to meet their basic needs are less likely to be interested in saving the environment. So scientists have actually gone out to certain groups of people and talked to them about a forested area or something. And the response with people that are in poverty is, how can I be concerned about saving the environment when I can hardly feed my children? And so this is something that makes things quite complex, and it's a challenge that is not easily overcome. And so this is something that maybe social scientists can help us with, and education can help us with, because by saving the environment and the concern for the environment, people that are poor and don't have their basic needs can actually start to gain their basic needs by saving the environment. And this picture, I can't remember why I put this in there, so we'll go back one. That is the end of chapter 1, and don't forget your notes on this chapter, and don't forget to read the text as well. You need to be doing both, watching the videos and reading the texts.